Welcome to the Oline Spectre. I'm your host, Dominic De Los Rios. In today's video, we will be recapping the 2025 Green Bay Packers season. You know, there's a lot of things that we can talk about in this video. A lot of things. If you're a Packer fan, you know. Special teams, Matthew Golden situation, Jordan Morgan, Jordan Love, Malik Willis, both those guys kind of connect together. That situation. Off-season stuff, regular season stuff, that post-game against the Bears. I mean, there's a lot of things we can talk about. I'm not going to get to everything today, but I definitely want to talk about the defense similarities and differences from the 2024 season and the 2025. A lot of it goes into sacks via turnovers. I mean, I was looking at a stat that blew my mind that last year we had more sacks than we did this year. Now, you may say, how can that be? We didn't have Micah, or our defense wasn't producing that much last year. They were and they weren't on different sides or different parts of the defense. I think the secondary last year was a lot more beefed than it was this year. For example, last year, I believe off the top of the dome, Xavier McKinney had 8 or 9 interceptions, which is ridiculous from a single player stat line. Having 8 interceptions, that's ridiculous. I mean, that's it. Words can't even come to my mind. But the one big difference from the defense last year and this year was how we were 4th in takeaways last year, but we were 13th this year. 13th is not going to get it done. You're not going to win a Super Bowl being 13th in the league in takeaways. Defense wins championships. In 2011, when the Packers won the 2010-2011 season, the Packers defense won them that Super Bowl. For sure. They had Rodgers. He was slinging it around. He was dropping dimes all over the field. That playoff run in 2010 and 2011 was ridiculous. But a lot of that stuff came from the defense, creating turnovers, sacks. Excuse me. Clay Matthews was a big part of that. Tramon Williams was a huge part of that as well. I mean, going back to it, I can't talk a lot about that because that's when I kind of started being a Green Bay Packers fan. That's when I kind of started to get into that. So I've kind of been there with you guys through the absolute worst moments. I'm not going to talk about that today. But one of the things I want to talk about, going back to the sacks, is that a lot of the stuff of the sacks this year came at different times than it did last year. And last year, when I was looking at the stats, I mean, there was a lot of games where we were recording a lot of sacks, but they just weren't coming at the right times. Like, for example, if we go back to the Arizona Cardinals game, Micah Parsons destroyed that game. Like, disrupted that entire game. I mean, I think it was Jonah Williams who was blocking him at right tackle. I believe so. And they were just leaving bro on an island. They're just like, yeah, just block Micah. You got it. And they just left him out there. And he was getting worked all game long. Micah had 3 sacks. I mean, he had a really big sack at the end of the game, I believe, in the 4th quarter. I think it was the second to last drive, maybe. I mean, Micah was a huge difference maker for our defense this year. Unfortunately, he couldn't play the entire season. I do think he's going to have a really big bounce back year. And I think when you give a guy like that adversity, I think those type of guys just come back even better. Even better. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we can say that the defense did a lot this year. and the offense. Both sides of the ball did a lot of good things. But a lot of the stuff that was bad was just the opportune times that it could happen. The inconsistencies between the defense and the offense was horrible. I mean, the first 2 games of the year, the defense and the offense were clicking. Straight belt to ass to the Detroit Lions week 1. Week 2, we played the Commanders a little sloppy, a little all over the place. There's a couple penalties. Those are things you can clean up week to week. You can go into a game and be like, man, our play was not very good. Let's focus on that this week in practice and get those things dialed in, and we come back the next week stronger. And I mean, a lot of that stuff came from, like, going back, I talked about the week 1, week 2, and then week 3 went to Cleveland. The defense, outstanding. Now you can say Cleveland's offense at that time wasn't that great, considering how they went down the stretch of the season when Shedeur Sanders finally started. I think their offense is a lot better going down the stretch of the season. But at that time, they had Joe Flacco. I think he was averaging like 3.5 to 5 yards on a pass attempt. Come on, man. But, that's sometimes you got to do when your quarterback's 40 years old. But, I mean, going to that game, I mean, it's just the inconsistency of the offense was really bad in that game. They couldn't score a point to save their life. Scored 10 points throughout 4 quarters playing the Browns. Come on, got to be better than that. But, a lot of that has to come down to is the O-line play in that game was atrocious. Jordan got sacked 5 times. You're not going to win a ball game if you let your quarterback get hit 5 times. You can, but if you're giving up 5 sacks, you're going to probably have to put up 20 to 30 points. 20 to 30, 35 at the most. I mean, but the next week was Dallas. We went to Dallas. That was a big game. Micah going back to Dallas, playing in AT&T Stadium. I mean, Jerry's World. That was a big game, and there's a lot of stuff that went into that. And, a lot of that stuff came from, like, the media likes to pump these games up. Ooh, Micah's going back, which it's a big game, but it's week 4. Calm down. It's going to be okay. But, that game the offense was clicking. I mean, the first half ended a little poorly with Jordan Love getting sacked and fumbling, and then they get the ball and they went up going into half. But the offense primarily for that game, I think that was one of Jordan's best games this year, was Dallas. I don't think it was his best game. I think it was one of his better ones, though. I don't have the stats right in front of me from that game, but I believe he threw around 50 passes, which if you're looking at that from an offensive perspective, you don't want to be throwing 50 times a game. I think when you look at teams that normally do that is like Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow tends to throw the ball a lot. And what does that happen? It means the more times you throw it, the higher chance of you throwing an interception it's just a higher chance of throwing an interception when you throw 50 plus passes or even 30 plus passes. It's higher than throwing 20 passes or 15. The one thing to really, bring in was the allowed points per game that the Packers had. And I think a lot of that was like at the beginning of the season, or before Micah tore his ACL, they were giving up 18 to 19 points a game. And I think that went back and forth after he got hurt because he wasn't on the field and he wasn't producing. And we were giving up, I have the stat right in front of me. In 2025, the Packers allowed 23 points per game. Last year, we allowed 27.1 points per game. It's okay. No, it's pretty bad. That's pretty bad. 27.1 points per game is not great. That's shootout numbers. That's like where the offense basically has got to score almost every time. But going back to that, they may have given up 27.1 points per game. But if we go back to it, they were fourth in takeaways. They took the ball away 31 times, 17 of those being interceptions, the rest being forced fumbles or other stuff like that. I mean, having 17 interceptions in the year is pretty dang good. I mean, McKinney, going back to what I said earlier, was McKinney had 8 picks. That's ridiculous. That's all pro type numbers. And McKinney didn't have that kind of impact this year, and I don't necessarily think that was the biggest thing on why the defense was inconsistent. I think the defense really relied on Micah's presence. I think when they traded for Micah, they brought a real big juice to the team. They start off 2-0, and then they dropped an L and a tie the next 2 weeks. And I think people started to figure out that if you shut down Micah, which is a really hard thing to do, that you can expose the Packers secondary. And I think that's one thing Packer fans really are confused about was why didn't we, in the offseason prior after the 2024 season, was why didn't we upgrade our secondary as much as we should have? I mean, we got Trayvon Diggs at the end of the season this year. Unfortunately, the Packers did release him. I don't think they were up to keeping him on and trying to reconstruct that contract. I'm not sure about all the logistics of it, but he didn't play a ton. He had kind of an off year for him. He's a pretty high caliber player, but the Packers just weren't feeling it. They didn't think he was the right decision to go into the 2026 NFL season. Going off the defensive side of the ball and going more into the offensive side of the ball, the offensive side of the ball did some pretty good things this year and did some bad things this year. I think when you're looking at it, I mean, I have some statistics of Josh Jacobs right in front of me. Let me read them to you. In 2025, Josh Jacobs carried the ball 234 times. It's a pretty good number. I mean, most of the high caliber or upper echelon running backs, I would consider Josh Jacobs to be a higher echelon running back in the league. That's a pretty good amount of carries. That's the average amount of carries that they're going to give a pretty good running back. He had 234 carries, 929 yards, and 13 touchdowns, and had 4 yards per carry. 4 yards per carry is decent. It's okay. It's not great, but it's not bad. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into that. The O-line play factors a lot into for how many yards the running back gets per carry. Now, it's not all in the O-line because the running back sometimes got to make something happen. But there's a lot of things that go into that with the O-line. And I think when you look at the Packers O-line this year, is they were banged up. I mean, we had Jordan Morgan at right tackle, left tackle, guards, the guard positions. We had Belton in there a couple times. I do not believe he played tackle, but I do know he played both sides, left guard and right guard. Sean Ryan had to go in there and play center, which he mostly plays in the interior 3, left guard, right guard, center. But after Jenkins broke his ankle, the year didn't feel right. The year felt cursed after we just had players dropping like flies. Elton went down. Jacobs was hurt for he didn't technically miss a lot of games, but he played in some games that he probably shouldn't have. But when you hear Josh Jacobs speak, bro's not missing a game. But I think one of the things going back to Josh Jacobs is his 2024 stats. He had 301 carries, 1,329 yards, and 15 touchdowns. And he had 4.4 yards per carry. But the biggest thing that I take from Josh Jacobs his first year with the Packers and his second year. His longest run last year was 38 yards. His longest run this year, get ready for it, 13. Kind of anticlimactic, right? Yeah, because that's what the Packers season was. Up and down, up and down. Just, man, pick something. Either be good or bad. I know it's not how that works, but, you know. But the O-line play did factor a lot into Jacobs' play. I mean, all the games I watched this year, there was a lot of stuff how I could see that the O-line wasn't getting to the second level. The second level being the linebackers. They weren't necessarily getting up to backers and getting in them, attached to them, and pushing them down the field. And I think there's a lot of things that atone to that. People not getting their double teams right. If you don't block up first, you got to block the first level. You got to block the down lineman first, and then get to the second level, the linebackers. Because then if you can get to the second level, you can leave Josh Jacobs with safeties or corners, all that stuff out there, the fluff, the soft stuff out there in the secondary, all the patty cake that goes on out there, and I think Josh Jacobs can do a lot of damage. I think, I see a lot on like Twitter and Instagram and stuff like that where people are like, man, they should get rid of Josh because it's like he's getting older. And no, why would we do that? Again, it goes into a little bit of his cap hit. It's a little bit higher this year, but I think that would be the worst idea ever is to get rid of Josh. So then you got to go find another running back that's better. I'm not 100%, but I'm pretty sure the market, there's not many running backs that are going to be better than Josh Jacobs. But going into that was, his longest run being 38 the previous year and then 13 the next year. That's not good. That's terrible. 13 yards? Are you kidding me? Have some pride. That's what I've always felt like. I've played O-line before, and I mean, have some pride. You want to go into a room and say, hey, my running back had the longest run in the season, and that's me. That was me. I can atone for that. That's the biggest thing of like the Packers is, just this straight up inconsistency. I mean, that last Bears game, the playoff game, the first half, the run game was clicking. Josh was getting 7, 8, 10 yards a carry. I mean, he had some breakout runs, nothing too big or too explosive, better terminology for it, but there's a lot of things that, are built into that. I think they were more aggressive in that Bears game in the first half. That game, that's a different conversation for a different day. The one thing I did want to talk about, though, is I did want to give a brief recap of Jordan Morgan's season. One of the things that I find a little bit interesting is the way people talk about Jordan Morgan, the way like the analysts and Packer fans talk about Jordan Morgan and how they just put this guy on blast, just talking about him constantly. And they're like, oh, Jordan Morgan, he's just not good for a first-round pick. I mean, give him some credit. The injuries were probably the biggest problem for the Packers this season. That's not an excuse. That's just the reality. Jordan Morgan had a lot of times when he was playing out of position. Jordan Morgan, when he played at Arizona, I believe was offensive tackle. He played tackle. Now, the game from a college perspective and an NFL perspective is the talent level is better. I think that's at every level. When I played O-line, when I played in high school, and then when I went to college football, the game moves faster. The games gets faster and faster and faster the higher you go up in the term of level. Or like for example, college, you got JUCO, D3, D2, D1. D1's you're gonna get the best competition, and the game's gonna be faster than it is in D2, D3, and JUCO. And I have a couple stats in front of me of Jordan Morgan's season. He committed a total of 4 penalties this year. He had 2 false starts in week 3 against Cleveland, which I do remember those. Those were just at bad times, man. Those are like first down, second down, and just like going into that, it's like, dang, that's a negative play. Now you're going from 1st and 10 to 2nd and, or 1st and 15, or it's 2nd and 10. You're going to 2nd and 15. Instead of 2nd and short, it's 3rd and medium or 3rd and long. He had 1 holding penalty against Dallas. I do remember that holding penalty. It was just one of those where, you're blocking and the guy kind of cuts you off and you got that arm wrapped around him. You just got to let go at that point, my guy. You just got to let go of that. And that also, holding penalties is one of the biggest things where people are like, why are you holding? Why are you doing this? I think holding goes on both sides of the ball. I think they call defensive holding very rarely. I don't have the stat in front of me, how much they call offensive holding to defensive holding at the line of scrimmage, or should I say O-line to D-line, not wide receivers and corners. But one of the things is your footwork. That goes into a lot of how you commit penalties. If you take the wrong step first, you're going to be behind. So you're definitely, I'm trying to think of the word, but you're just more attuned to making that mistake when you're a step behind to the guy you're trying to block. And that's one of the biggest things on O-line that people don't understand is the technique and the fundamentals. I hear Matt LaFleur talking about it all the time. Fundamentals, because that's what it is. It's a fundamental game, especially from the O-line position. I think when you look at players like, going over to the other side of the ball, Micah Parsons. I mean, when you see him play, he's just fast. And then his footwork sometimes, Micah, is horrible. He's taking the wrong step. He's doing whatever. But he's just like that to the point where he's a dog. He can make the wrong step and still beat you. But, looking at Jordan Morgan's sophomore season, I thought it was pretty good. I thought for what they asked him to do, I think he did pretty well. A lot of the things in the other thing I want to talk about before I end the Jordan Morgan recap is the situation that happened in the Bears game where he was playing left tackle, I believe, and he had the D end on him, and he had a linebacker come in from the inside, I believe. I believe it was his, if I'm playing left tackle, I believe it was his right shoulder. He came in, he had the D end on him. That's a tough situation to be in. That's a lose-lose. That's almost impossible to block that up with one offensive lineman. I mean, you got to pick. And considering that situation, I do not believe that there was I do not believe that there was a running back in protection. So there's not a lot of help that he gets there. If you do go back and watch that play, look at Anthony Belton when he's playing that. That linebacker comes. He's working with Sean Ryan. I'm not sure if Sean Ryan had gotten hurt at that point in the game. I do not believe so. If you look at that, Anthony Belton has got his head down, and he's trying to block, and he doesn't get off. He's his help. Now, I'm not 100% on that because I don't know the protection. I don't know if it's a left slide or a right slide. Left slide and right slide, meaning you're sliding the protection to the danger. So let's say we're at the line of scrimmage. We got left guard or left tackle, left guard, center, guard, right tackle. If you have 3 defenders to the right of the center and 2 to the left of the center, you want to make sure that's Jordan's job. He's got to check the protection and he's got to slide it right because we got to make sure that we get those guys blocked up. And we got to make sure that those 2 guys probably have a man-on-man situation, or if they do some type of stunt situation, that they can pass that off. And that is a lot of it is the quarterback. He's got to look at the defense, be like, okay, I got to make sure the protection's going this way. I got to make sure it's going that way. And there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, when you look at the play, Anthony Belton is just totally lost. And I'm not sure if he's not supposed to come off to that guy, if that's not part of his job assignment. If that is not part of his job assignment, then that's on Jordan Love. Then that's on Jordan. Because if that guy's hot, if there's no running back, that means that guy's hot. That means Jordan has to somehow create a hot route for himself with the wide receivers. He needs to create a hot route so he's throwing hot off that guy. Because if that guy comes, hey, Jordan, you got to get that ball out quick because we're not blocking him. And I think to put Jordan Morgan in that position, it's tough. It's really tough to be in that situation. You just got to pick a guy and hope you picked correctly. Hope Jordan can reset off that. Maybe dump out of the pocket left or to the right. Maybe step up in the pocket. Maybe make the linebacker miss. Abide some time in the pocket. But I think overall, if the Packers' offensive line wasn't as banged up as it was, we would have saw a better version of Jordan Morgan this year. I think that comes to all plays. I think to all positions, I mean, Matthew Golden was banged up a couple times. Wicks and Tom didn't even play in that game against the Bears in the playoffs. Jordan missed a couple one game. He went out for half a game, and then, that's untrue. He went out a couple other times in the season because his shoulder was banged up. And that was one of the things that was a big key of the Packers season was injuries. Injuries was their biggest downfall, was how much they were injured. And that's a lot of the stuff that goes into it. I mean, again, how I talked about earlier in the video was it's not an excuse, but it is also just the reality. It's just the reality. You got to adapt. Next man up. Some players, as a former player, it's just like that word kind of annoys me sometimes. It's like next guy up. My goodness. Maybe it's next guy up. Maybe it's the guy after that. But going more into that, I mean, that situation just for Jordan Morgan was not good. Not good. But, it is what it is. And that's the biggest thing that we can talk about. Jordan Morgan's season was it just was all over the place. The Packers' season was all over the place. It was up and down, up and down. And, there's a lot of stuff that goes into that with maybe the Packers training staff. Maybe somebody needs to get fired. Maybe they need to do something different. Now, I'm not sure, but who knows? But that's all the time I got for you today. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Hit that notifications button because you need to know when the Oline Spectre is putting out a new video. I'll see you on the next one. Yes, sir, bless ya.